All ready to go then, Hope?
Yeah, we'll just let the folks who are joining in
Okay.
get on board here.
Karis.
But yes, ready anytime.
Okay, thank you. All right, everybody, welcome to this a special council meeting with a revised agenda of Monday, January 31st, 2022. Opening of the council meeting, I'd like to acknowledge with gratitude that we live and work on the traditional unceded territory of the Squamish Nation. The stewards of these lands and waters for many millenniums, Bowen Island. Thank you. First item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. Anybody have any interest in any changes there? If not, I will approve.
Hang on. I think we had a late item.
Yep, there's just one letter from Don Youngson.
Yeah. From which one was that?
From Don Youngson.
Okay, yeah. Okay, I've got that one. Thank you, Hope. And with that, I will approve the agenda by consensus. And we'll move on to public comments, please. Hope? I
don't have anyone registered at the moment, but there are people joining us here if you want to do a call out.
Sure, absolutely. Would anybody like to chat? I see there's Brad. I would like to speak. All right, Brad, go ahead. We'll give you about 3 or 4 minutes.
I'll be quicker than that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Brad Hawthorn, 1217 Adams Road, Bowen Island.
2 seniors.
Not sure who that was. Anyways, I will continue. Hopefully you've had a chance to read the letter I sent in regarding the use of funds for local service areas and for capital renewal and replacement funds. Hopefully you've had a chance to actually get a legal opinion of using the funds you're contemplating. And so I'm just wondering whether you've done that or not.
All right. Do you want to respond to that, Liam, or leave it for now?
Oh, I can respond. So we've not had a legal opinion from our lawyers because we are fairly certain that we are in safe legal jurisdiction for the use of the proposed use of the funds. Municipality can use general revenue at its sole discretion for local area services whenever it deems appropriate. And so that includes both the capital renewal and replacement reserve as well as the unappropriated surplus, as the municipality did do that in the past in 2010 when the last sewer expansion project was completed. It used $720,000 from unappropriated surplus for the municipal portion. But with certainty, it's not so easy to use statutory reserve funds from a local area service for other services. So going the other way, that is much more difficult. It's not impossible, but it can be done. But in this instance, the municipality's or council's discretion as to whether or not it wants to contribute towards a local area service.
Okay, thank you. Anything else, Brad?
No, except that I strongly recommend that you get a legal opinion on that.
Okay, thank you. And anybody else out there that would like to have something to say? If
Yeah. Oh.
You can speak.
Oh, hello. Hi. Can you hear
Is that
me?
you, Gerry?
Yeah, Gerry.
Okay, go ahead, Gerry Kirk.
Gerry Kirk. I own lot 12 with my wife and daughter. My issue is that I'm trying to build a home on another part of the island, and I really do require funds from the duplex lot. I've talked to 2 realtors today. Neither one of them will give me a price that I should list it at, what I should do. And given that our issue is on the other part of the island, I've got to be sure that that's known, that lot is not just sitting there. There was it was listed for sale with another agent. There was some interest in it from a party from Alberta. And when this appeared, that disappeared pretty quick. So I just need to say that I was asked today to find out if this lot could even be put up for sale as it stands. And that's why I'm curious. So this is a family home I'm trying to build, and I require the money from the lot that we paid for when it first came up. So I just need to say that.
All right. Thank you very much, Gerry. I appreciate it. And I'm very aware of your situation there. And it's going to be an ongoing battle to see if we can't get everybody in. But at this point in time, I'm afraid that that lot would not be in at this point in time. But let's see how this thing unfolds.
May I just ask, is lot 12 in which area, Gerry?
Foxglove.
No, Foxglove.
Foxglove, yeah.
Thank you.
And I've had it since the beginning, and a lot of people have got sewage since I paid a premium to have that all services in. So if I can't sell my lot, and I'm a gentleman, and I would like to find some way that this can be done because my family want their new home, what do I do? Someone suggested, well, there's two people that you should be suing. It should be the municipality. It should be the old folks home that sold it to you. And they sold it with all-in services. So I sit here today unable, and I'm left my job in a job I've had for 20 years because I want to build this place. I'm going to have to go live somewhere else on the island because I expected I could build this home. This is a sad tale, but it's a real tale. I've been on the island for 35 years. My wife has been on it for 28. She's raised her family here. I cannot sell a piece of property that I own, fully paid for, very free and clear, with the guarantees that when I purchased it, it was all services in. I can't understand why we're going to have to work at this to find out how some way I can do it when so many people since have got the ability. We found ways that apartment buildings could be approved. We found out that the fire hall, even though it's one toilet, have a toilet. Anyway, I'm 83 years old. I would like to build my home and I can't. So what do I do? Do I be the quiet young man who says, okay, this is life and I have to go along with it? Or do I pull out all guns and say, no, not acceptable. I want to sell my lot and you need to say I can. And if you can't, then I have to find other ways to do it. That's not a threat. It's just, I need to build my home and you're stopping me from doing it through the sewer, not you personally. Anyway, enough said.
Gerry, I certainly sympathize and I understand your frustration, and this is going to be a stepped approach to this, and hopefully we'll be able to work something out in the future. But we're just taking it step by step, and you just have to bear with us until we can find out whether we can do anything there. Okay, anybody else out in the audience that would like to chat? Okay, I don't see anybody, so I'm going to move on to staff reports, and we'll go to 3.1, which is a wastewater treatment plant upgrades update, and next steps. Over to Patrick Graham, Director of Engineering. Patrick, it's over to you. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Mayor. So I've got a short presentation that really just focuses on updates from the last meeting where we discussed this extensively. And so I will share my screen and go through that. Okay. Sorry. I can't get rid of that.
You got it there.
Okay, can you see that?
Yes.
Oh, that's the wrong one. So since January 24th, last week, there was a reluctance to proceed with the recommendation for financing phase one and proceeding with phase one without going to the Finance Advisory Committee for advice. And so that was done on January 26th. And the funding recommendations were revised accordingly, which we'll discuss. There was also some concern about the number of properties accommodated by the proposed phase one upgrades, really just including the properties that commitments have been made to and excluding recent building permits that have been submitted. So that the sizing of the offline equalization storage has been reviewed to confirm that by increasing it could accommodate essentially the existing winter population. The winter condition is when the highest flows happen, and that's the design condition. So there's 400 population equivalent from the urban systems capacity assessment and pre-design. So since September 2020 till now, there's been 60 additional added between units on Foxglove, Rivendell, and part of the apartment building. And then 29 more expected in early 2022 in the first months of the year. And then 12 and a half the Rivendell building permits that are on hold. So that's a total of increase of 400 to 501.5 and about a 25% increase. And that still doesn't, as was pointed out, unfortunately, address the vacant lots. The estimated costs, is desired to keep that down as much as possible, and so to offset the cost for larger storage. Urban systems and staff looked at ways to reduce the costs by essentially avoiding to have to expand the blower room building, accommodating that in the dewatering building. I think that could be done. Placing the valve chamber with pumps in each EQ tank, which we'll just go to this one here. It's nice to have a valve chamber and gravity feed back into the system, probably lower life cycle costs. You don't have to pay for power of the pumps, but it is cheaper to put a pump in each tank. So that could reduce the costs. Deferring some of the works, fencing, EQ tank covers. So instead of a roof, you'd have some netting. And then influent flow meter, but I think we probably can avoid this. It's important. It's all mentioned when we get into infiltration. So I think when we'd like to engage a general contractor for construction management, essentially bringing a contractor on board partway through design is often a good way to, especially when you're dealing with a tight site, retrofit to existing. It can be a good way to identify additional cost saving measures through the rest of the design process. So we're hopeful that we can do that. Funding sources, as per the Finance Advisory Committee recommendations, were changed from $1 million from the Capital Renewal and Replacement Reserve and 640 from unappropriated surplus. Felt more comfortable with that breakdown. So essentially, that's phase one upgrades that we're talking about. We discussed that a bit at the last meeting with the revisions I just mentioned. And then in terms of phase two, we're looking at a longer, it's looking like we're not proceeding immediately, phase two following phase one. So there's some escalation in costs. Urban systems have been comparing costs between now and sort of the end of last year, and have advised that a lot of this type of work has gone up significantly. And that's been the trend. So, and then there's work deferred from phase one. really not sure about funding strategy. It would be best to proceed with phase 2 design. You know, then you're in a position to move forward with it, but it's going to have to be evaluated as part of the 2022 budget process and other priorities and the risks associated with deferring those other things. So there has been a lot of sort of talk about, well, just stop the infiltration and then you solve your problem. And so it's difficult to rely on that as a strategy. I mean, we do and have been doing that, and we've stepped up efforts. Looked at we have a specialist in manhole rehabilitation that gave us a price to curtain grout some 4 manholes where we've seen some infiltration. We have found a suspected foundation drain inflow that we're following up on, and there's a few manholes where they look to be in low spots, and there could be some risk of pooling water getting in. And condition assessment for all sanitary manholes. Planning to proceed with that. It's also part of the ongoing asset management plan development, as well as staff inspections ongoing to do whatever we can to address that source. There's always inflow and infiltration, all systems have it, and it's difficult to quantify the effectiveness of the efforts, especially if we don't have inflow and flow monitoring. So I think it's really important that we retain that and proceed with that. And the difficulty is translating, okay, well, we've addressed these sources. Well, what does that mean in terms of the peak flow assumption that you use for your design population? So that's going to be the challenge there. But we do need to construct the equalization storage. Essentially, if you were designing a plant for these populations we're talking about, you would size the bioreactors for the peak day, and you wouldn't typically be doing this. Essentially, using oversized offline equalization to work it through. That's doable here, and the least cost approach for the first step. So we're looking for a recommendation from council to proceed on that basis. That's it in a nutshell.
Okay, thank you. Just for clarification, Patrick, on that, on the new numbers that came out. So you said that the permits that are on hold right now are going to go through. Is that correct?
Well, that by making the equalization storage a little bit bigger, that can be accommodated.
And what's the timeline on that? I'm not asking to pin it down, but is that 6 months or a year, or what is it?
In terms of getting phase 1 constructed?
Yes.
Well, the quickest we could, if we got a construction management RFP posted right away and had somebody on board in April, and then it would completing the design process by the fall, and then construction, you're probably into early next year, early 2023.
All right.
It's potentially before the end of the year, but more likely beginning of 2023.
All right. Super. Thank you. Okay. Questions out there, please. All right. Maureen, thank you.
Could you, Patrick, could you list the 5 permits that will be able to proceed as a result of this recent discussion? Whose permits are they?
There are 5 permits all on Rivendell Drive. 4 building permit applications, and then 1 property that's been given a excavation permit as a preliminary step towards a building permit. So it's those 5. I don't have the addresses in front of me.
I guess I'm just thinking about some of the people who spoke with us at the last meeting. So, for example, would Carla Skuce and her family be included? And
That's-
would Terrace?
Those are two of the properties. that
Okay.
would be included.
Okay. Thank you.
Is that it, Maureen?
Yeah, for now.
Okay, anybody else have questions from Patrick? For Patrick? All right,
No,
so
I have one. Sorry,
who's that?
again, Brad Hawthorn.
Okay, I would have left it till the end of the meeting, but under the circumstance, go ahead.
That's fine. It's about inflow monitoring and data. So you'd mentioned that there was no inflow monitoring to help determine I&I on the inlet of the sewage treatment plant, but I understand that there there's monitoring on the pump station on the boardwalk. Is that correct?
Yeah, we have flow monitoring. The pump station on the boardwalk was rehabilitated and with new pumps and sealing the pump chamber in this past year. And so we do have flow monitoring on the pump station, and we have pump records, like pump monitoring on the Miller Road pump station. And we did install some temporary monitoring on the Dorman gravity line for purposes of calibrating the assumptions and models. But there isn't an inflow meter at the plant. There's an effluent monitor that was calibrated as part of this past work as well. So
Right,
that's what,
but-
yeah.
Right. So if you have date and time stamps on every pump start and stop at that pump station, you should have inflow data from your oldest part of your collection system, correct?
We have we have inflow data. It's just incomplete. It's not, we have the pieces. We have the flow, the pump stations, and then we have the effluent.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a portion as gravity that would be picked up by the pump stations.
Yeah, no, I'm familiar with the system. My point was you have inflow data from the oldest part of the sewage collection system.
Yes, we do.
Okay, thank you, Brad. Is that it? I'm going to go over to Sue Ellen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question was the same about the inflow monitoring. I'm very interested in this. I think with data, you can obviously make better decisions and know what's going on and all that. I think it's a great idea. My question was, where would you place it? And I'm gathering that's at the plant, where it comes into the plant. Great. And I'm just in support of whatever you can do to make that part of phase one. But I understand that it may not be possible, but to me, it just makes sense to have all the data when you're trying to put the puzzle together. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Sue. Allison? Allison, you're not on.
Oh, there we go. I thought sorry, apologize. I'm in the car, so I can't fix how you can see me or anything. So 273 cubic meters a day is maximum day flow. So how does that seems like an awful lot for 106 people. Like that's, compared to the total amount of flow that has been measured for the last 4 months in the, for the last round of meter readings. I guess I'm a little concerned about not trying to find some of this I&I before we start spending $1.6 million. And so do I understand that the pump station down on the boardwalk, that's the old part of the system, and the Cates Hill system, does that run into that same pump station, or does that run in somewhere else?
No, that's through gravity.
Okay, so there's sort of 3 ways the water gets into the plant: from gravity from Cates Hill, from the Miller Road pump station, and the pump station down at the boardwalk.
Yes.
And so if you can measure the inflow through the two of them, the Miller Road and the boardwalk, then the difference has got to come from Kate's Hill.
Yeah, those,
So-
yeah.
And you've no way when the thing overflows, how often has it overflowed in the last 6 months?
I believe it was 3 times.
Okay, and were those heavy rain events or shortly after heavy rain events?
Yeah. Yeah. So it does coincide with heavy rain.
So,
And
and
the-
you
and
have
the-
one,
And the effluent flow monitor doesn't pick that up, right? If it doesn't go through the plant properly, it's not. It doesn't give you that.
and how much can the system actually process in a day?
Well, if you have all of the if you have all the bioreactors online, which we can't do because there's not enough equalization storage in the inflow pump chamber. It needs to have one of the bioreactors used for that. And that's one of the reasons we need to install more equalization storage offline.
So just to understand in layman's terms, when you say equalization storage, you mean storing the water or the inflow until because it can only process it so much,
yeah.
so
So when
many
you
gallons
get
a minute through the plant. So how many gallons a minute can the plant process?
with all bioreactors online, you're supposed to be able to put 240 cubic meters per day through. In practice, I mean, that Dewey's been able to get through less than that. They will say you can have your influent pump running for 180 seconds on, 180 seconds off, and he'll try that, and you're getting washout in the bioreactor, so it has to be backed off. So I mean, there may be a way to get 240. Theoretically, we should be able to put through 240 cubic meters a day with all three. With one of them offline, it's 180 is the maximum that you could put through in a day.
And then I guess the other comment that sort of, and going back and thinking and watching the video of the 24th meeting again, Mary's comment from Urban Systems along the lines of, our I&I is 50% of our inflow. And we should be, and that's a point where the province says you need to sort of start looking. So our I&I is, or I guess our rainy day, our wet day inflow is double our dry day inflow. Maybe that's how she said it. So I guess I'm just not comfortable with spending, $1.6 million when I'm going back and reading all this stuff before we've really, how long is it going to take to reseal those manhole covers and to go and find out about the suspected roof runoff?
Well, we're going to get the manholes rehabilitated in the next month, hopefully. I mean, we've got somebody on board to do that. And I'm not sure, we're just following up on this. We don't know for sure. It's a foundation drain connected in. It's just something we suspected. These are just the things we were able to find. I don't know how much of that, what portion of the inflow that is. It's probably, a fraction of it, but I don't know what fraction. So it's, there's been other sources that have been addressed in the past. It's an ongoing process to try and keep that to a minimum. And all systems have this, and that sort of 2-to-1 ratio is that's sort of a typical guideline. When you get, if you're above that, there's probably sources that you can find and address. And when you get lower than that, it becomes harder and harder to find, where you're having infiltration from. And so that's always part of the design. We can do our best to reduce that, and that's what we're doing. I mean, I think not having, I guess the point is that it's a problem right now to not have the amount of equalization storage we need for peak days. So to rely on being able to address the whole problem with inflow and infiltration reduction measures, I don't think is enough. It's not enough to
Solve our issues now.
to get the system functioning the way it needs to be.
Okay, so 1 cubic meter is 220 gallons?
Which kind of gallon? I hate gallons.
Well, I'm assuming imperial.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah, so in your maximum daily flow here, I unfortunately, I still deal in gallons in my head. It just seems like an awful lot of water that people would use. That 106 people would use 273 cubic meters in a day.
60,000 gallons.
It's more than 106 people. That's for 501 people.
Well, this says the maximum daily flow is estimated at 273 cubic meters per day for 106.5 additional people. I'm reading from the first bullet on the report we just got.
Yeah, on top of the 400 that are already, like 106 additional plus 400 that are already there as part of the initial capacity review.
So you're saying the 273 cubic meters is for 506 people?
501. Oh, sorry. Yeah. So that's the total number for everybody that's there now, plus development that's underway and buildings that are being occupied and building permits that have been submitted. All of that.
Okay. Well, again, I'm still uncomfortable about spending all that money without trying to find if there isn't enough room for those extra people by dealing with the I&I. I've got my assistant over here calculating
20 gallons a day.
yeah, numbers for me. My other concern is taking the money from the capital replacement and renewal fund. I'm definitely not in favor of taking it from appropriated surplus. And back in 2010, we took the money from appropriated surplus on the basis that we, the municipality, were the developer, and we were going to benefit from being able to service and develop the community lands. And unappropriated surplus isn't a reserve fund that has very specific uses. And I think the definition of what capital replacement and renewal fund can be used for doesn't allow us for adding new things like new bioreactors and new storage tanks. So
Upgrade.
yeah, it's an upgrade, not replacing a tank that's already there. So I'm totally sympathetic with the people that have got into this problem, but I just would like to see us look at a little more of trying to solve some of the current issues with the inflow.
I think we have to go ahead with the fix, the major fix on phase one, and then any of the I&I that we can repair, that's great. Maybe we'll get a report down the road that we can put a couple more people on it. That's where we're going to stand, or we're going to have to go ahead with the first part. Is that it, Allison?
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm going to go David and back to Maureen and then Michael.
Thank you, Gary. I've got a couple of comments and a couple of questions. Just a comment on the I&I. I agree with, I was also looking through the data and astounded at the, how much on rainy days the I&I causes the problem. But I was looking into other data across the region in Metro Vancouver, and I can agree with what Patrick said, is our numbers are similar to others, where on heavy days, their volumes double or sometimes even triple. So it's a real problem, and I'm happy that we're working on it. But I agree with Gary. We should move forward. I've got a question about some of the letters raised. It's around the issue of the municipality as a whole paying for something in a local service area. Now, it's obvious, so that of course that Snug Cove is more than a local service area. We all use the shops and the restaurants and the pub and so on. So it seems reasonable for us to be paying to some degree. But that idea of us loaning from our reserve fund to the Snug Cove Reserve Fund and asking them to pay back, is that feasible? I guess that's a question to Liam.
Yes, it's feasible, but I guess it's a question as to whether or not it's reasonable or justifiable, in the sense that why are we doing this project in the first place? And so the project is needed for a variety of reasons. There's a renewal component to it because the original existing plant wasn't built with sufficient equalization storage at the front end to allow for all of the bioreactors to be used. So to me, that's part of the renewal component. We're also having to do it because we're pushing up against regulatory requirements that will require us to have improved treatment quality and capacity. And then the perhaps the most pressing reason is because capacity that was once there was given away to projects that were deemed to be strategically important to the island, but there was never any funding identified to fill in that capacity that was given away. So here we are at the day where we have next to no capacity left and no funding in the Snug Cove sewer reserve, or inadequate funding in the reserve. And so then the question is, okay, who is responsible to pay?
Okay, thanks, Liam. So my next point or question, I guess, it's looking forward, looking to the future. How do we make sure that we're not in this situation in the future? What do we do going forward to make sure that we are don't end up getting in a situation once again where we need to fix the problem because we didn't operate properly, we didn't fund things properly, and so on. It's a question sort of around that, but also thinking of the issue around conservation. Like the water that goes into the sewer is the water that goes, other than I&I, the water that goes into the house. And we talked a little bit last time about how our water rates are the opposite of progressive. They're regressive. The more you use, the cheaper it gets. Things like low flush toilets, shower heads, and so on. What can we do around that? So it's going forward. What can we do to reduce the stress and then make sure also that we don't get in this same mess again? So I guess it's you again, Liam. Sorry.
It's a very good question, and council has approached this in the past too. There were plans, put together, and lots of discussions and previous councils about how to make sure that the user pay model works and that development pays for development. However, not all of the tools that are available to us were established or put into practice. And so that's what we really want to do. And last year, this council did give direction to staff to develop a development cost charge for the sewer area. And so we are working on that. For us, the path forward for all the utilities and services are to try to get to that model of user pay and to be really crisp and clear about that. And so for the sewer project itself, phase 2 is a project that we may have to put on hold for 5 years or more and develop a financing strategy that will ensure that new development is paying for that. The next step, or one of the next steps in our DCC project, the development cost charge project, is to meet with all the development, the primary developers that would be working on projects in the Cove, and to discuss with them the costs of development in the Cove and what the proposed development cost charges would look like. And so theoretically, if those developers then said, okay, well, we now understand the cost of development, we can factor that into our pro formas, and they can then make appropriate plans to move forward. We can recover the development costs from those projects to go towards the capital investment for phase 2. And it may be, we don't have exact numbers because it's all forecasting, but perhaps the expansion of the plant for phase 2 looks like 70% or 75% of the cost is coming from new development that we are already aware of and that we can recover DCCs for. The remaining 25% would have to be front-ended by the municipality, and we could recover that remaining 25% through latecomer agreements or other such tools. And so we're very cognizant that going forward, we have to make sure that these types of tools are ready and available for the municipality to use, and not just for the sewer. We want to explore the same tools for all the water systems. And then Councillor Hawking, your points about conservation are critical to this. The cheapest water is already in our pipes. And so whether that's like thinking about drinking water or sewer, we can do a lot to extend the life of our services by conservation measures. And so we're going to be, trying to improve our education campaigns. Bowen is already pretty good. We've had multiple consultants look at our consumption and say, well, you're already water wise. You're a water wise community, but there's room for improvement, no doubt. And so we're going to pursue that as well. I hope that helps.
Yeah, thank you very much, Liam. I just have one more comment, and this is to just thank Patrick. At the end of the last meeting, we said, Patrick, find us a little bit more room, please, so that we can accommodate some of those folks who are in a very, very difficult situation, and you were able to do that working with a consultant. So I just wanted to thank you for that. I was very pleased to read that in your report. So thanks.
Thank you, David. And that's a really good point, Patrick. Squeezed out a few more here, and that certainly takes the pressure off for sure. I'm going to go to Michael, please, and then Maureen, and then Allison.
Thank you, Gary. And perhaps I wanted to try and stay on point here.
Yeah.
I think the purpose of tonight's meeting, very simply, is to take Patrick's report. And Patrick, thank you. Not only was your report written in understandable terms, it was also mercifully concise and didn't fail the test of rambling on and on with endless holes to fall down with inflow, outflow, and upflow and downflow and wherever flow. So you stayed on track. So thank you for that. I'm extremely grateful, and I think some of the others are as well. If I could I just focus for a moment, because if we're going to approve this, and let's assume, Patrick, that you're going to go ahead with your recommendations, and the best case scenarios we're done by the end of this year, this part of the project. And I recognize what I'm saying. It's leaving the future unspoken to tonight, but I think it's where the future should be tonight, because that's not what tonight is focusing on, if I understand the agenda at all. So, Patrick, just looking at the people element, could you just clarify for me, your recommendations go ahead. It's completed by the end of the year. Could you just clarify me just who we have been able to accommodate by your best estimations and on this report? Because I wasn't 100% sure. Could you just, I'm not looking for names, but I remember a list of people, and they were from a couple of areas. And I remember there were a list of people that we felt were most at risk, most urgent, give it whatever name you like. But how many of these good folk, these buildings, have we been able to satisfy?
It's the development that's already occurred or is in progress. There's some units that are underway, and the building permit applications that have already been submitted. It doesn't include, unfortunately, the vacant lots in Kate's Hill and Foxglove.
Okay, so thank you very much, Pat. So roughly, if we look at the amount of households, could you just tell me how many households it is that you think we've accommodated by under the definition you've just given us.
So it's, you mean total in the
Yeah, just the
service
amount
area?
of households. We've been able to satisfy how many households now who will be able to proceed and build their dream houses or whatever else?
It's about 20, well, about 100 people. So about 50.
Excellent, thank you. So what by approving your recommendations tonight and by the recommendations made by the Finance Committee, we at least can do that, recognizing that this is not the complete story. In fact, this is just the beginning of a very difficult course of action that we're going to have to sit down and talk about in the very near future, and this subject's not going to go away. And I'm wondering, Mayor, if we could perhaps focus on these. And frankly, I have total confidence in Patrick and the reports that I have received from our technical advice that we've received from the consultants. I frankly am just asking that. I wonder if we could proceed and get the and get Patrick's give him the surety he needs to proceed and the surety that we need to move ahead with this part of the financing for the first phase. And if we could accomplish that this evening, if nothing else, and maybe I could ask Mayor through your office that we focus on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you 100%, Michael, and that's a point well taken, that we do have to sort of get through with this this phase, but there's still some people left hanging there, and then we'll start working on them. So we just keep narrowing our focus on this, and hopefully we'll get everybody through. But it's going to be a tough haul, and there's no guarantees on what happens after tonight. But we'll certainly focus on that group of people at that point in time. So I think I'm Maureen, and then Sue Ellen and Rob.
Thank you, Miranda. I'm going to broaden it out a little bit. I know what's on the table right now. I know what the considerations are, but I do have some broader questions that I want to bring up. The first one is actually to emphasize a point that you made, Miranda, which was, would it be possible as we went along, if the phase one changes were made and we found through monitoring that there actually was additional capacity that we had not anticipated, either through, well, for whatever reason. Would it be possible, Patrick, question for you, would it be possible to bring additional people on board on a discretionary basis?
Yeah, if we're able to reduce inflow and infiltration, and have some confidence that that's had a measurable, a meaningful effect on the peak days, the peak day flow going into the plant, then we can look at evaluating what's reasonable for the plant to accommodate. What's a reasonable risk of exceeding it.
Thank you. I think that goes to Councillor Morris's concern about not having enough information right now about I&I. We have some. As we get more, we'll be able to presumably
make decisions accordingly.
Yeah. So I mean, that speaks to being attentive and flexible. And then the second, I have 4 questions. The second question has to do with sort of the conceptualizing of the phases. We've got phase one, which is the immediate fix. And I think we pretty much have a handle on what that involves. And then we've got phase two, which is really big. And it involves that near-term growth and the 3 to 20-year growth and the price tag associated with that. That's a fairly long time horizon, especially given the changes that we're experiencing in terms of our climate. So I guess my question, again, a question for Patrick, is there any advantage in thinking about this not as a 2-phase project, but as a 3-phase project which effectively you have done in outlining the number of folks affected in each of those 3 phases. So why is it being conceptualized as 2 rather than 3? That sounds academic, I'm sorry. But
No, it's a good question. It could be 3 phases. There's the phase 2, which is looking at, a 20-year growth, is adding 2 new bioreactors that we've confirmed could fit on the existing site, and a new inflow pump station and a bunch of other work. So yeah, you could have a project that involves the one of the bioreactors, and the inflow pump station might be needed for that. And then there's also the outflow pipe replacement, which that could potentially be done as a 3rd phase. Yeah, so it's probably more efficient in terms of, if you're looking at total costs, to develop as a single project, if it were possible to finance it that way. It may be more than 1 go, maybe 2, broken up into 2, or potentially 3. You have to look at it in more detail to know what would make sense.
Yeah, I mean, I just was really thinking about the feasibility. If $6 million is way too much of a chunk, and we can do this incrementally, it may make it more possible. And then I guess the 3rd point has to do with climate change, which has been in the background of some of our comments last week, and in some of the reports that we have received. And the comment that David made regarding this being our experience not being all that uncommon, that other communities are, I hope I've got this right, David, that other communities are experiencing these kinds of influxes from extreme weather events, and we know they're coming. So my question is probably more for Liam. If what we're facing is framed as a response to climate change, an emergency that has been intensified as a result of things like so far infrequently occurring atmospheric rivers that are going to be occur more frequently in the future, does that put us in a better position for applying for grant support for remediating the problem we have?
I like the way you're thinking, and the province is also thinking that way. So being able to link any kind of funding request to the impacts of climate change is beneficial. However, the project is not likely going to be very eligible for funding, especially phase 2, which is predominantly for new development, right? There's definitely elements in there of existing development that need to be accommodated, but the provincial infrastructure programs are pretty clear that new development must pay its own way, and that they don't fund expansion for new development. And this plant was funded in 2010 from the province and the federal government, and so they would not likely be looking to refund it anytime soon.
Okay. And unfortunately, the capacity that we expected as a result of the work on that plant was gone, as you said. And I guess I just want to speak, just a comment and then one final comment. When these projects were approved, the understanding was that the capacity was there. And there were, as you've mentioned, some of the projects that were approved were viewed by council as good projects, deserving of support, and this was a way in which to provide support. And there also was an understanding that the sewer capacity would reach a peak, and that at that point there would need to be DCC. So as you mentioned, that conversation has been going on for a while. So I guess I'm responding to a concern that sort of willy-nilly councils past and present have approved projects without concern about sewer capacity. The understanding was that the capacity was there.
Right.
And things have changed.
Yeah, and I sorry, Councillor Nixon, I've seen that too in the past reports, and I think the trick with the DCCs is that they need to be in place well in advance. I mean, you can use them to finance, to retroactively finance capital expenditures if necessary for limited capital expenditures, but for this you could, but typically they need to be in place like for 10 years or more before you need the actual renewal. So that's what we need to start doing now is that long range planning, and that's what the reserves were set up for too. And so I mean, Bowen's done a good job at establishing reserves and setting things up, and so there's a lot of great foundational work for us to build upon here.
And then just my final point has to do with, we have two groups sitting in the wings wondering what to do. And that's Snug Cove House and Birch, both of whom are actively approaching funding organizations. And those are big discussions that probably we're not dealing with.
Not for tonight.
They're too big, but they're very much on my radar. And that's it for me.
All right, thanks, Maureen. Sue Ellen?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to say thanks for the great discussion. We're at almost an hour here, and I wanted to follow up on the inflow monitoring, some of the reasons that people have, that councillors have brought out, as well as Patrick. And for example, are we experiencing climate change impacts? That's why we need that inflow monitor, and to tell whether any conservation measures that people take voluntarily, and I mean low flow toilets and things like that, or that we help encourage through pricing and whatever, are they working? These are the kinds of things that inflow data can help us with, or whether there's room for a few more households to join. That's why I think we need that information, is to help our operations staff. But that's just that little $17,000 estimate for the inflow monitoring, if I've got that right. But the more important thing to me is pollution and the ability to operate without spills. And that's what we're talking about tonight. So, you know, I'm all for, and I think development permits across the Islands Trusted area there've been more of them with COVID. People are developing properties, so we've got more pressure on as well. And anyway, I'm prepared, like last week, to move the motions, and I'll move them one at a time, except I know Rob hasn't spoken. So what's your preference, Mr. Mayor?
Let's just finish the conversation and then I'll let you go to town there. Allison's also in there. Rob, go ahead. Thank you, Sue Ellen.
Yeah, thanks, Gary. And yeah, I know we had to delay that vote last week, but I think it was worthwhile going to the FAC, Finance Advisory Committee. I mean, this obviously, where the finances come from is a big concern of mine. And David touched on the possibility of looking at a mechanism where we can replenish our capital reserves through user fees starting now and moving forward to replace those funds. You know, one of the changes we made at the FAC was we moved more money into the capital replacement versus the unappropriated surpluses, which I support. But there's still not great reserves, I think, where they should be coming from. I know there's some benefit to the entire island, but, you know, like improved treatment. I mean, you know, when one of us has to put in our new septic, there's also improvements we need to make. And we're, you know, people off the system are still going to be on the hook for that. So not an ideal decision to make tonight. I think we're really up against a wall on this one. I really don't see a way out of it. And I've looked at quite a lot of options. I'm definitely happy to hear that staff got, a clear message that we need to be switching over to a user pay system. And especially as was brought up, we need to make sure that we're charging appropriately so that heavy users are paying more for the system. I guess, yeah, my one question to Patrick would be, it looks like we're not going to be approving the 400,000 to move forward with looking at phase 2 of the system, and we're going to look at that in the 2022 budget. I just wanted to know what his thoughts were on that, if there's any financial implications to not moving ahead with that now as we're switching over part of this, or as we're building part of the system. So that will be my question to Patrick on that. And yeah, and I think that's it. I mean, the bigger council picture to think 20 years down the road, I know Maureen brought up 20 years, is, for development, we have, we want to develop in the Cove and not all over the place. And obviously without having the sewer capacity there, that's going to change the look of development on Bowen as well, where we might not have development going into the walkable areas close to the ferry where there's not cars driving everywhere. And that's definitely a concern for this, but also future councils, that we have to keep in mind that the longer we delay on phase 2, the more we could be seeing development moving out across the island versus where we want it to be in the Cove. So that's a bit of a bigger picture thing that we need to also take into account. And Patrick, thanks a lot. You did a really good job on the reports. That couldn't have been easy work, and I really felt like you put in 100% on that, which makes me a bit more comfortable on making the decision tonight. Thanks.
Thank you, Rob. And that's a point well taken about the development status and that sort of thing. Allison, last comment, and then we're going to go back to Sue Ellen. She can read the recommendation.
I guess my only comment was, I don't think you're going to find much in the way of conservation, because I do remember when the plant was expanded, there was issues and bot issues, and the reports sort of indicated that part of that was because we're such a water conservation community, so there wasn't enough water running through the system. So is there bot issues as well, Patrick, still to deal with, or has that problem been solved itself?
There is a load limitation in the summer in terms of like biological load, and then but it's the hydraulic capacity in the higher flow that's limiting the plant. If that answers your question.
Okay, thanks.
All right, thank you, Allison. All right, I see no further discussion. Go ahead, Sue Ellen, with the recommendation, please. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll do them one at a time.
Sure.
Is there a possibility to just say one thing before you vote?
There's a question period at the end, Gerry, unless.
Okay,
yeah,
sorry.
I'll bring you in there.
So I move that council direct staff to include 1,640,000 in the 2022 municipal capital budget for construction of the phase 1 Snug Cove wastewater treatment plant upgrades, 1 million from the capital renewal and replacement reserve, and 640,000 from unappropriated surplus.
Okay, I'll second that. Further discussion? See anybody? I'll ask a question. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, and opposed? Allison? Okay, thank you. Councillor Morse in opposition. And go ahead, the next one, Sue Ellen, it does pass.
That council direct staff to proceed with posting a request for proposals for construction management for phase 1 water treatment plant upgrades.
All right, I'll second that also. And any further discussion? Okay, I'll ask a question. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, Allison, I can't see your hand there. Are you in or out? Can't hear you.
You didn't ask for opposed.
Okay, opposed?
And we're talking about the sewer treatment plant. I thought I heard the word water treatment plant.
No, it didn't say
Sorry,
anything about.
wastewater treatment plant upgrades.
Yes, correct. And, okay, Councillor Morris in opposition, and number 3, please.
I move that council direct staff to proceed with negotiations with Metro Vancouver regarding acquisition of the approximately 102 meters squared area of Crippen Park that is required for phase 2 wastewater treatment plant upgrades.
Thank you. I'll second that. Any further discussion? Okay, I'll ask the question. All in favor? Aye. All right, and I think that one is unanimous. And okay, and that brings that part of the report all to a close. Thank you very much, everybody. And question period. And I know Gerry is sitting in the wings there. Go ahead, Gerry.
You know, I've listened, I'm involved. To me, this is what you're dealing with is big world stuff. There's 16 families sitting here with small world stuff that people signed contracts, people went to banks, people borrowed money, people trusted what they were buying, what they were doing, what was normal. This is the way life is. And you people, I'm not saying you people personally, are taking the big world stuff, which is really important, and you're taking it away from the small world stuff. You're talking about you don't know exactly. You're guessing. Well, I'm not guessing. When I signed a note, when I borrow money, when I make promises, I believe that you should be kept. And I think you people, being council, you people's rude, I don't mean to be rude, need to say, these 16 families, whoever they may be, sign contracts, are doing what they do to live their lives, not worry about what you people are talking about now. I think that you got to do what you're doing, but you got to take 16 people and say, this is different. This is away from what you're talking about. This is not what's going through pipes. This is not what's happening. This is lives being changed. The stress that you're putting on us is unreal. We went along with the way the world is run. We signed, we paid, we want it now. I just heard tonight that maybe phase 2 won't be ready for 5 years. Okay, so we're now going to sit here and wait for 5 years so I can then come and whine to you people that you got to be honest, you got to be real, you got to stand up, and you got to approve what you got to approve, which is look after the people that you're here to look after. Do your floats, do your stuff, do what you need to do to protect the future. But right now you're responsible to 16 families. And those are the people you got to protect. Thank you.
Thank you, Gerry. And these are the people that we are going to try and protect. Where that is our number one focus, is to get you guys onto that sewer. And we're going to do everything we possibly can to do that. We got, we got some people on there, but that is our number one prime focus, is to make that happen for you. And we're going to do it as soon as we possibly can.
Just needed to hear.
And that's all I can tell you. I'm sorry, Gerry. All right. Anybody else with questions or comments out there before we close her up? Okay. If not, I will declare this meeting adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody. And we still have a long way to go on this. There's no question. This is just the beginning. It is not the end. So we'll just take it piece by piece and keep working away at it. Thank you very much, everybody. And have a good evening.
Thanks, Gary.